Hello, everybody. Just to make clear to everybody, that's cousins, but not in a weird way. It's perfectly applicable and appropriate. It's all good. Now, look, I'm sure when people looked at what Rob was talking about and what I'm talking about, it's like, you know, they're going to be talking about the same sort of thing, but actually sort of, if you think about what we were talking about with regards to attention last year, for anybody who was here, the narrative has evolved so far beyond what we were talking 12 months ago. And really what I want to dig into here, sort of taking on from what Rob was talking about, the context and the impact that it has on attention is clearly paramount, is actually what that means for a lot of future media channels, what that means for the challenges that we face in today's industry and how we can solve for them today, but actually through that solution today, what that means on how you can be successful when we talk about emerging media channels and what your media mix is going to look like in the future. So, yeah, I don't know about you guys, but sort of my life has changed immeasurably sort of over the last 12, 24 months, sort of over a very, very short period of time in terms of the way that I am connected digitally. There was a stat that suggests that over the last 5 years, we've gone from 5.3 on average devices that we engage with to 9.4. So it's not news that the world is evolving and everything is changing and we're starting to engage with more digital channels. But I think that the speed in which that change is happening is just, it's absolutely immense. So if you think about the way that you're planning towards media, you're planning towards advertising in the future, that is very, very different in 12 months. It's very, very different in 6 months. You know, when we think about connected devices, sort of, you know, in-game is already a huge growth area. We're all talking about CTV, but you know, there will come a point where something like your Peloton is going to be ad-enabled. A lot of the channels, a lot of the different environments that we've always associated with either subscription models or just being sort of walled gardens, they are starting to open out into advertising. Now, again, that changes the way in which we need to engage users, the way that we need to think about the world and how we deliver advertising as a result. Now, I've touched upon these two things a little bit, but sort of, you know, that new world of digital advertising is already here to an extent. You know, the Peloton side of things will come at a point, but we are already here with in-game. We're already here with CTV. It's things that everybody in the industry is talking about. But if you consider those two mediums, they are very, very different environments for us to start thinking about. You know, to take in-game. Gaming is hugely popular. The stat that I have is US-based, that there's 180 million gamers in the US today. So the size of that population is huge. But if you consider gaming and how its legacy, gaming has never been ad-enabled. It's always been a one-time purchase, and then people sort of get on with enjoying their game. They might do updates and use Steam and things like that to get updates on their games. It has not been related to advertising, but that is changing significantly. And we need to think about that, and it's it's arguably a bit contentious to gamers that you start enabling that with ads. And then on the CTV front, we've already seen loads of announcements around subscription models, people like Netflix moving to an ad-enabled model. You know, we are changing the way in which people are engaging with these platforms by inserting advertising into them. So there is a huge level of consideration that we need to make when we think about this. Now, maybe this story makes me a terrible father, so excuse me, but like, I have a 2- and a 4-year-old at home. As soon as an advert comes on in the middle of Peppa Pig, I hear a scream across the house. Like, and actually my 2-year-old knows where the skip button is on an advert. Like, I think that when you look at kids and the way that they're engaging with media, like that is the most clean and open and transparent form of the way that people are reacting to advertising. And both of these mediums have that impact where we're trying to change the way that people are engaging or being exposed to advertising in channels that they're not used to. So, look, these things are coming. We need to deal with them. They're going to be important, but we need to be very considerate and thoughtful about the way that we go around this. So, I mean, there's a number of different pressure points that will start to incur as a result of these changes and these growth of these new media channels. So, you know, if you think about your Peloton, like, how do we think about how we're targeting those users? You know, we know that we're in a privacy-first, privacy-forward world. you probably don't want to disrupt a Peloton user in the middle of their session. Sort of, whilst you're sweating away, you don't want to be exposed to an ad for KFC, or maybe you do. But again, it's lots and lots of different considerations and the way that we see and we engage with consumers in all of these new emerging media channels. Now, if I think about the problems that we face today, they're also the problems that we're going to face in these new channels. So sort of to take these from 1 to 3, privacy concerns. As an industry, as a world, we are much, much more familiar and we're much more aware and conscientious of the fact that we are very privacy first. GDPR, CCPA, fights between the IAB and different sort of data memberships. There is a lot going on in the privacy world. Now, we find this somewhat challenging to deal with as an industry because there's grey areas, there's lots of compliance to think about. And fundamentally, the way that our industry has operated for a long time, it's always been reliant on things that arguably become non-privacy compliant at some point. There's also the death of the cookie, which is looming. It may well take longer than we're predicting for that death of the cookie to happen. But the one thing that we do know is that the cookie is going to go away. And if you think about those other media channels, CTV, in-game, the metaverse, etc., we still have these same privacy concerns, but what we also want to do is be able to deliver advertising to users that makes sense, and we understand that we drive value, and that we drive good outcomes. Those privacy concerns make that a lot more challenging. 10,000 ads a day. So this is a stat that comes out of P&G that suggests that today you could be exposed to up to 10,000 advertisements every single day. So that number is huge. Now, that to me has a number of implications. So from a consumer perspective, that means that you are being bombarded. What is the value exchange for being served 10,000 ads every single day? How can, I have a finite amount of attention. How can I pay attention to 10,000 ads a day? We know that there's going to be a lot of that which is being ignored. Which, again, from a consumer perspective, that doesn't give me value as a consumer. All I feel is that I'm being bombarded and overloaded with ads. Now, I'm not going to get into the rabbit hole of talking about good and bad attention and how that sort of might impact on the way that we deliver on these ads. But, it does mean that we need to take a step back as an industry and think about how we drive that value exchange, how we start to cut through that clutter, or actually how we reduce that number of exposures so that, we are driving valuable ad experiences for users that then drive a better outcome for me as a brand or as an advertiser. The last one is irrelevant ads. So to go back to my my story of my kids, the only time where they are not kicking and screaming about the ad that they're being served in YouTube is when it looks like a cartoon. Because they think it's something which is relevant to them. They go, oh, actually, is this just an extension of Peppa Pig and some brave new world? We need to understand how we create relevance, and that's relevance on various different levels. It's relevance for targeting, it's relevance for messaging. There are lots and lots of key considerations in this. But again, we have these 3 problems that are really, really critical to success for a brand, and we need to face them now. But these will also, if you can nail this today, this will ready yourself for the future and the emerging media channels. So, look, I wanted to talk about sort of 3 core areas that we think tackle this. Now, hopefully this will change into a video of some variety. No, there we go. Look, first and foremost, contextual. I'm going to touch upon this. Look, the way that contextual operates today is that you can take a human level understanding of the content that sits on a page. We have the capabilities around natural language processing, image recognition. There is lots that you can do with contextual to identify and target a user without any use of a cookie. But when we think about contextual, it can go so much more than that. There are lots and lots of different data signals that we can start thinking about with regards to CTV, with in-game, but also, contextual can be about environmental things. Is it geo? Is it that you're in an Uber from A to B? Is it that you're at the end of your hour-long Peloton workout, so you are actually really sweaty and you just need a bottle of water? So actually the idea of contextual and this idea of not being able to target cookieless is going to be an area that continues to grow, continues to evolve, and it will plug into these emerging media channels. Second of all, innovative new creative formats. people don't want to be dragged away from their user experience within a lot of these media environments. I've already talked about the fact that we're changing the landscape of gaming from this sort of purchase model to an ongoing ad-funded, or maybe that there's just sort of ads in the background that the user isn't necessarily aware of. We are changing this space. It's the same for in video and CTV. We've all been brought up on this idea of subscription models for CTV, predominantly in the European markets, but that is changing. So we need to think about the way in which we deliver advertising and deliver creative messaging that starts to align well with these types of environments. And fundamentally, this then wraps around to the way in which we're going to measure these types of environments and how we can understand the value. Because we're an industry that has continually been fixated on immediacy or metrics. What was the CTR? What was the CPA in a 30-day cookie window? Those things are no longer applicable in these worlds. People don't want to be dragged away from, watching the last episode of Billions or whatever it might be, whatever floats your boat. They want to, yes, be exposed to advertising, and I think that there can be a sympathetic view to this, that there is a value exchange, that you're getting access to Netflix for free of charge, but you are going to be exposed to advertising. But, it needs to be done in a way that drives value exchange, drives attention for a brand, and ultimately it's a win-win situation. And look, my last thing is measuring attention. So, look, it's kind of why we're all here and why we're all on this stage, to understand a little bit more around attention. With the increased number of channels, with the increased number of platforms that people are engaging with, we need a interconnecting measurement piece. Now, we talk a lot about attention-based measurement for digital advertising, but actually there is a lot of disparity in the way that we measure and understand the value of different channels today. Arguably CTV will probably start to be pulled into this idea of how we measure linear TV. But actually, really, it should all come together under one bucket of how we measure and understand the value exchange. And like I say, I'm not going to go in the rabbit holes of sort of good and bad attention, but those are things that we need to start thinking about and understanding. Sort of attention could be the metric that connects every single media channel that we work with. The ones that exist today, the ones that exist tomorrow, the ones that exist in 5 years. And hopefully we get to this world where actually I can start comparing the value of attention on TV versus digital out of home versus your Peloton. And if we can start to nail this today and get to an understanding of what attention means for us as a business and advertisers, then all of this future connectivity, we will bring it together and we will really drive value and understanding. That is me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Rob. That was really good, and thank you for all your attention there. One of the things that I think is really important is on your ending there of the power of context, between media, but also within media. From your perspective at the moment, obviously you're seeing these big differences about the amount of attention that different ads get in different contexts. We have a question here about where the demand is coming from. Are you seeing it from the publishers saying, I have these amazing contexts and I would like to charge more money for it? Or do you see it from your clients on the buy side saying, we are looking for the best places?
This is an awareness test.
Where's the... Is it
passes?
Is it a push from high quality context, or is it a pull from clients looking for the best places?
In honesty, I think it's both at the moment. It used to be very much on the publisher side. Clearly, there is a win for a publisher to be able to increase value of the media that they push by adding context and understanding the quality of that. But I think, as with anything in the attention space and the contextual space, actually, the buy side is now starting to take much, much more interest in that, which I think is amazing. And I think that ideally, actually, it probably switches further and further to the buy side. But, we're sort of in that middle ground right now.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Another hand for Pete. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's super.